You think of George W. Bush flying over a drowning New Orleans in 2005, seemingly oblivious to the chaos and incompetence below. Or those weird summer days in 1979 when Jimmy Carter, returning from a self-imposed spiritual retreat, offered the country a sermon on moral drift and then demanded the resignations of his entire cabinet. Although maybe Carter's defining episode actually occurred that spring, while he was vacationing in Georgia, when his fishing boat was chased by a vicious swamp rabbit. And so might we look back on this week, decades from now, as the one that cemented the enduring impression of the Trump administration, which, for all its entertaining gyrations, always seems to end up at a place of meanness and misdirection. So tasteless was this week's episode of Trump Unbound that, in addition to the outcries even from cowering Republicans in Congress, every former First Lady felt moved to publicly oppose the policy of snatching immigrant children from their parents and throwing them into detention centers. All of this, I thought, reaffirmed the basic goodness and resilience of our political culture, but raised a few questions about who wasn't yet speaking out more forcefully about the ugly arc of our politics. Namely, why have the husbands of all these political wives been so tepid? And if this isn't a time for the other 5 living presidents to put basic American values above the tradition of not criticizing their successors, then what would such a moment look like? To be fair, Bill Clinton did tweet a few lines criticizing the border policy on Father's Day. Barack Obama posted some box-checking stuff on Facebook. Okay. But I'm not talking about opposing any single administration policy, or about issuing a few sentences of mild dissent before tea time. I'm talking about the oath each of these guys took, hand on the Bible, to protect and defend the Constitution. Presumably that wasn't only about enforcing the letter of the law. Presidents aren't federal judges. No, what each of them pledged was to vehemently defend the basic ideals of American pluralism and tolerance, here and abroad. And I don't think that pledge expired on the day the moving van showed up at the White House. And we probably assumed that Trump would make some dumb and erratic policy choices along the way. That's fine. All presidents do. But we know now who Trump really is, at his political core. He's an ethnic and economic nationalist. He fervently believes that countries, ours and others, do better when they rally around a mythical common heritage and repel outsiders. He believes that leaders who rule under the banner of national superiority are men to be admired and trusted. How else to read the recent tweet in which Trump taunted Europeans, and especially Germans, for allowing millions of people in who have so strongly and violently changed their culture? Or the one a few days ago in which he talked about immigrants who would infest our country, like vermin? It's like Trump made a bet with someone that he could recycle Nazi propaganda and no one would care. How else to explain his evident idolatry for strongmen like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, his public longing for showy military parades, his war on global trade agreements and multilateral alliances? Trump isn't just an isolationist. He idealizes national purity and imperial order. His politics isn't America first, it's Americans first, and he gets to decide who qualifies. None of this is against the law. It's not impeachable. It's just inherently un-American, and it blows up an age-old consensus about what our president is supposed to represent in the world. The last 3 presidents certainly suffered their share of failures in trying to lead an integrated world and repel the forces of radical nationalism. Clinton championed a kind of unrestrained globalism that hollowed out communities. George W. Bush initiated a calamitous war. Barack Obama couldn't get his own party behind a landmark trade pact. But all of them, like every president for a century before them, saw the American presidency as an essential platform for integrating societies and transcending ethnic divides. They disagreed sharply about how best to embody those values, but they did not consider the proposition that America could embody anything else. All of which leads me back to my initial point. When do these ex-presidents, who generally bond over funerals or humanitarian crises, call one another and say, you know what? If nothing else, we need to go out there together and tell the world that the America we represented still exists. That would count for a lot. Maybe, for our most admired living politicians, seeing the President of the United States wave the flag of nationalism and ethnic separatism like some backwoods Balkan militia leader doesn't sink to that level of betraying the office. But then that really does prompt the question that each should be asking himself. What would